The first thing she smelled was smoke. Thick, bitter, alive. It crept into her lungs with every breath, scratching her throat, burning her eyes, turning the afternoon sky into a choking bruise of orange and black. Emma Carter tightened her hold on her baby and stumbled through the dry underbrush, her boots slipping on ash-covered stones as the forest around her crackled like it was breathing fire. The wind howled through the pines, carrying sparks that danced like cruel stars, and somewhere behind her a tree exploded with a sound like cannon fire. She didn't look back. She couldn't. Fear had narrowed her world to the weight of her child in her arms and the frantic drum of her own heartbeat. The fire had come fast, too fast. One moment the valley had been quiet, the kind of quiet that only the frontier knew, wide and patient and honest. The next, the horizon had turned red, smoke rolling in like a living thing, swallowing the land she thought she understood. Emma had lived on the edge of this forest for 3 years, ever since her husband died and left her with nothing but a small cabin, a stubborn hope, and a newborn baby who depended on her for everything. She knew the land, knew its moods, knew the warning signs, but this fire hadn't followed the rules. It leapt ridges, devoured clearings, moved with the speed of something angry and hungry. Her baby whimpered against her chest, a small, frightened sound that sliced straight through her. "It's all right," Emma whispered. Though her voice shook and the lie tasted like ash, she could feel the heat now pressing against her back, licking at her skin even through her dress. Her arms ached, her lungs burned, and every step felt heavier than the last. She had run until her legs trembled, until the world narrowed to smoke and flame and the desperate need to keep moving. But the forest was closing in. Fire on one side, a steep ravine on the other, the ground ahead already glowing with embers. She stopped when her body finally refused to go any farther. Her knees buckled and she dropped to the ground, coughing violently as smoke poured into her lungs. Tears streamed down her face, cutting clean tracks through the soot on her cheeks. Around her, the fire roared like a living beast, flames climbing tree trunks and leaping from branch to branch, the air shimmering with heat. The sky was gone, replaced by a boiling ceiling of smoke. There was nowhere left to run. The truth hit her with a cold clarity that cut deeper than fear. She wasn't going to outrun this. Not carrying a baby. Not like this. Emma curled around her child, turning her body into a shield, pressing her face into the baby's soft hair. "I'm here," she whispered again and again, as if the words could build a wall between them and the fire. Her mind raced, searching for a miracle, a path she'd missed anything but the forest, answered only with the roar of flames and the snapping of burning wood. This was how it ended then, not quietly, not gently, but in heat and smoke and terror. She felt a sob tear out of her chest, raw and broken, and for the first time since her husband's death, she let herself believe she was truly helpless. Then she heard it, a sound that didn't belong, not the crackle of fire or the scream of wind, but the sharp rhythmic beat of hooves. At first she thought it was her imagination, a trick of a desperate mind. But the sound grew louder, clearer, cutting through the chaos like a blade. Hooves, a horse. Emma lifted her head, blinking through tears and smoke, her heart pounding with something dangerously close to hope. Out of the wall of smoke emerged a shape, dark, solid, moving with purpose straight toward the fire instead of away from it. A massive black stallion burst into view, muscles rippling beneath a soot-streaked coat, nostrils flaring as it charged, through embers and flame like it feared nothing on this earth. The man on its back looked like a shadow given form. He wore a long coat darkened by smoke, a wide-brimmed hat pulled low over his eyes, and he sat his horse like he was born there. Fire licked at his boots, sparks clung to his clothes, but he didn't slow. He didn't hesitate. The stallion reared slightly as it reached Emma, and the man swung down in one smooth motion, boots hitting the ground hard. "Ma'am," he said, his voice low and steady, cutting through the roar of the fire. "Can you stand?" Emma stared at him, stunned, her mouth opening but no words coming out. Up close she could see his face, weathered, strong, marked by old scars that caught the firelight and threw it back in harsh lines. His eyes were dark, focused, unreadable, but there was no panic in them, only resolve. My baby," she managed, clutching the child tighter as another wave of smoke hit her. He didn't waste time on questions. He stepped closer, shrugging off his coat and wrapping it around her and the baby, the heavy fabric smelling of leather and horse and something solid and safe. "I've got you," he said, as if it were the simplest thing in the world.
He lifted her with an ease that shocked her,
one arm supporting her, the other steadying the baby, and turned back toward the stallion. The fire surged behind them, a wall of heat and sound, but the man moved like he knew exactly where he was going. He swung up onto the horse, pulling Emma in front of him, settling the baby securely between them. The stallion stamped and snorted, eyes rolling as sparks rained down, but it didn't bolt. It waited, coiled and ready. "Hold on," the man said quietly. And then they rode straight into the fire. Flames closed in around them, heat blasting against Emma's face, smoke stealing what little breath she had left. She buried her face against the man's chest, clutching the baby with one arm and the front of his shirt with the other, her fingers digging into hard muscle. The stallion surged forward, hooves pounding over burning ground, leaping fallen branches, pushing through smoke so thick Emma thought she would pass out. Every second felt like an eternity, every breath a gamble. She didn't know how long it lasted. Time dissolved into heat and fear, and the relentless motion of the horse beneath them. Then suddenly the air changed, it cooled. The roar of the fire faded behind them, replaced by the sound of wind rushing through open space. The stallion burst out of the smoke into a clearing untouched by flames, grass bending under its hooves, the sky above a bruised purple instead of burning orange. Emma sagged against the man, her strength finally gone. The horse slowed, then stopped, sides heaving. The man swung down again, helping her to the ground, keeping a steady hand on her arm until she could stand on her own. She looked around in disbelief. The fire was still there, raging at the edge of the clearing, but it hadn't crossed. They were safe, alive. She looked up at the man, tears streaming freely now, her voice breaking. You saved us." He nodded once, as if it were nothing worth mentioning. "Fire won't cross this creek," he said, gesturing to the shallow ribbon of water cutting through the grass. "You're safe here. For now." Emma held her baby close, shaking, overwhelmed by gratitude and shock and the sudden release of terror. "I don't even know your name," she said. For a moment, something flickered in his eyes, something old and heavy, like a door half opened and quickly shut. "Name's not important," he replied. He looked back toward the fire, jaw tightening. "What matters is you don't stay out here alone." She didn't know then that the man standing in front of her, quiet, scarred, smelling of smoke and leather, was more than a wandering rancher. She didn't know he owned half the territory beyond those burning trees, or that his scars had nothing to do with fire and everything to do with blood and loss. She only knew that when the world had ended in flame, he had ridden straight through hell to pull her and her baby back, and nothing in her life would ever be the same again. The clearing felt unreal, like a fragile pocket of peace carved out of chaos. Smoke still hung low in the air, drifting in gray ribbons over the grass. But here the heat had eased, and the ground beneath Emma's boots was cool and damp instead of burning. She sank down beside the narrow creek, her legs finally giving out, and held her baby close as if the world might try to take him from her again. The child's cries softened into weak, hiccuping breaths, his tiny fingers clutching at her dress, and Emma pressed her lips to his forehead, whispering prayers she hadn't spoken since the day she buried her husband. The man stood a few paces away, one hand resting on the black stallion's neck, murmuring low, steady words that soothed the animal even as flames crackled in the distance. Up close, Emma noticed how calm he was, not cold, not careless, but grounded, like panic simply didn't have a place inside him. The horse responded to that calm, lowering its head, sides still heaving but no longer wild with fear, so it streaked both of them, man and beast alike, and firelight flickered across the man's face, deepening the shadows in the lines carved by sun, wind, and years of hard living. "Thank you," Emma said again, because the words felt too small and too important not to be repeated. Her voice trembled, exhaustion settling into her bones now that the danger had eased. I thought we were going to die." He turned toward her slowly, studying her with an intensity that made her straighten despite her fatigue. His gaze flicked briefly to the baby, then back to her face, and something in his expression softened just enough for her to notice. "Fire takes what hesitates," he said. "You didn't." She almost laughed at that. She had never felt braver or more terrified in her life, but the sound stuck in her throat. Instead, she hugged her baby closer and looked around the clearing, the thin creek winding through it like a silver promise. Beyond it, the fire raged, flames bending with the wind, but stopping short of the water as if respecting some ancient boundary. "I don't have anywhere else to go," she admitted quietly. "My cabin, It's back that way. She nodded toward the smoke, already knowing the answer. He followed her gaze, jaw tightening. If it's in the forest, it's gone, he said. No cruelty in the words, just truth. The weight of it hit her all at once. Gone? Cabin her husband had built. With his own hands. The small garden she'd coaxed from stubborn soil. The few possessions she had left in the world, all swallowed by fire. Emma bowed her head, a sob shaking her shoulders, grief and relief tangling together until she couldn't tell where one ended. And the other began. She had lost everything again, but she and her baby were alive. That had to be enough. It had to be. The man waited, giving her the space to cry, his presence steady and silent. When she finally looked up, wiping her face with the back of her hand, she saw him unfastening a saddlebag from the horse. He knelt, pulled out a canteen, and held it out to her. Small sips, he said. The water was cool and clean, and Emma drank carefully, then offered some to her baby, dampening his lips with her finger. Strength seeped back into her in small, precious amounts. I'm Emma, she said after a moment, realizing she hadn't even given him that. And this is Noah. He nodded once. Noah, he repeated as if testing the name. Good. And you? She asked gently. She sensed that pushing wouldn't help. But the question felt necessary. A way of grounding this stranger in reality instead of letting him remain. Some kind of miracle. He hesitated just for a heartbeat. Call me Cole, he said at last. The name settled between them, heavy with things unspoken. Emma didn't know why, but she felt certain it wasn't the whole truth. Still, she accepted it. Right now, names mattered less than survival. The wind shifted and a fresh wave of smoke rolled toward the clearing. Cole straightened, scanning the tree line, his posture changing, alert, decisive. Fire's moving east, he said. This place'll hold for a bit, but not all night. A familiar knot of fear tightened in Emma's chest. Then what do we do? He looked at her, really looked at her, taking in the baby, her soot-streaked face, the thinness that spoke of a life lived close to the edge. You come with me, he said simply. I've got land south of here. Stone house. Fire won't reach it. Emma blinked. Come with him. The idea was terrifying in its own way, following a stranger into the unknown, but what choice did she have? The forest behind her was burning, and the future she'd imagined was ash. She thought of Noah's tiny heartbeat against her chest, of the way Cole had ridden straight into the flames without hesitation. Trust, she realized, wasn't about certainty. It was about choosing the least dangerous unknown. All right, she said, surprising herself with how steady her voice sounded. We'll come. They rode again, this time at a slower pace. Skirting the edge of the fire, following a path Cole seemed to know by heart. The land opened up as they moved south, trees thinning into rolling grassland, the air growing clearer with every mile. Emma watched the world pass by with a strange sense of detachment, as if she were floating just outside her own body. Her life had split into a before and an after, and she was still falling into the space between. Cole said little as they rode, focused on the trail ahead, but Emma became acutely aware of him, the solid warmth of his body behind her, the way his hands guided the reins with quiet confidence, the faint scars she could feel through his shirt when she leaned back. She wondered what kind of man carried himself like this, what kind of past carved such stillness into a person. She wondered what those scars had cost him. As night crept in, the fire faded into a distant glow behind them. A red smear on the horizon. Ahead lights appeared, lamps, steady and welcoming, scattered across a broad stretch of land. Fences cut clean lines through the grass, and beyond them rose a large stone house, dark against the stars, solid as the earth itself. Emma's breath caught. This is yours? Cole didn't answer right away. He guided the horse toward the house, the sound of hooves muffled on the soft ground, then finally said, It's where I live. It wasn't until later, much later, that Emma would learn the truth. That this wasn't just a home, but the heart of an empire stretching farther than she could see. That the man who had pulled her from the fire owned half the territory around them, his name carrying weight and fear in equal measure. For now, all she knew was that she had followed a stranger out of hell and into the unknown, and somehow against all odds, she felt safer than she had in years. Behind them, the forest burned. Ahead,